president you deserve. No matter what the media mob wants you to believe, this race is incredibly tight. A new Susquehanna poll shows the president up by 1 in Florida. ABC, Washington Post, their poll shows the president up by 2. North Carolina, Insider Advantage poll has the president up by 4. The Trafalgar Group has him up by 2. Insider Advantage has the president up by 2 in Pennsylvania. Trafalgar has the president up by 1 in Pennsylvania. Inside Advantage also gives him a 2-point lead in the state of Georgia. We'll have more on that in a minute. Another Insider Advantage poll has the president down by 2 in Michigan. Trafalgar has the president up 3 in Michigan. In Iowa, 3 new polls to share tonight. The president leading, including a Des Moines Register poll that has the president up by a whopping 7. But my advice to you is assume that President Trump is behind. If you want President Trump to win, assume he needs your vote. If you want to use my analogy that I've been using, let's say it's a football game. You have 2 minutes left to go in the game. You have no timeouts. You're on your own 20. You got to march down the field 80 yards, cross the plane, score a touchdown, kick the extra point if you want to win. If you all have that mentality, especially in the states that I mentioned, you can ensure that Donald Trump will get a second term. If not, the weak, frail, corrupt, and cognitive declining, and I would also add power-grabbing Joe Biden and the radical socialists will do what they say they're going to do. No matter how hard we try to stop it, it will be very hard to do. So get to the polls. You will decide. I only have 1 vote in New York. My vote is not worth very much. Vote for law and order and safety and security, capitalism over the false promises of socialism. Vote for our Constitution. Vote for freedom. Vote for your way of life, because guess what? Your way of life depends on what happens. Here with more, Insider Advantage pollster Matt Towery, Trafalgar Group chief pollster Robert Cahaly is with us. Both these men have 2 things in common. They were 2 pollsters that accurately predicted what would happen in 2016. Both have it very, very close. Let me start with a general, broad question. Must-win states for the president, and Matt will let you answer first. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Arizona, Iowa. Where do you see the president in all 4 of those states? In all of those states?
Well, I see the president up in Florida. I see him up in Georgia. He's up in Iowa in our poll. I have him up in Pennsylvania, and so does Robert, and that's probably the most critical state of all. And I'll either go with my number or Robert's number, but I see the momentum moving in that direction. I think the president, Arizona is critical, and I haven't polled Arizona. He needs to poll Arizona as well. If he does all of that, then and Texas ends up, as I believe it will be, and that is in the Trump column. I see Donald Trump being reelected. I am amazed at watching these polls that are coming from these networks and these news organizations that have the president down 10, down 7, 8, 9 in various states. That's just sheer folly. I mean, we do have races that are close, but the momentum has shifted in this race in the battleground states, and it's very obvious to anyone who is in those battleground states with the president's turnout, which is phenomenal with these rallies.
Robert, let's go to the basics. The president has to win Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, Arizona. Do you have him winning all of those as of now?
Absolutely. Unquestionably, every one of those we see a clear victory. Yeah.
Okay. Assuming that's the case, and there are other pollsters. By the way, we'll get to this question in a minute. Now, assuming that, now the president needs either Michigan or Pennsylvania or a combination of Wisconsin and a Nevada or Nebraska 2, Maine 2. Tell us, let's look, Robert, we'll start with you. Pennsylvania, you have the president up by 2. Let's look at Michigan, Wisconsin, and those, and maybe Minnesota even.
Well, way I look at Pennsylvania is, unfortunately, I think he's got to win by 4 or 5 to overtake the voter fraud that'll happen there. It's very systematic in Pennsylvania. I think it's achievable to get to 4 or 5, but I think that's the kind of margin he needs to have in Pennsylvania to survive.
But you're not predicting that. You're basically saying that he will win, but they'll steal it? Is that what you're predicting?
I'm saying he better win by 4 or 5% to make sure he actually gets the victory there. I think that's the margin he'd need to avoid what they will systematically do.
Well, what I've been told is that there are poll watchers everywhere. There are lawyers on the ground. Both sides have them. All right, of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, what states do you have them up in?
We have him up in Michigan. We had him down a little bit in Wisconsin, but we will be putting out another Wisconsin poll at some point, either tomorrow or first thing Tuesday morning. We have in Minnesota, we have him a little bit down, but we still have Kanye getting 3.3% of the vote. And so when you run it without Kanye, he's winning Minnesota, but with Kanye, it's a little different. Now, we do think some of those Kanye people will break off and end up with the president. And we showed him, I think it was 2.5 down in Nevada, but is certainly moving the right way in Nevada for Trump. And with all this kind of, Biden is the candidate of shutdowns and Trump is to keep them open, the people who work in the service and culinary industry are having real second thoughts, even if they like Biden, of sticking with him.
All right, Matt, so Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, what do you see?
Well, I agree with Robert. We have to worry about the sort of playing around with the ballots and the like in Pennsylvania. I think the president's momentum could easily get him to that 4%, 3% level. I think if he's at that level, it doesn't matter what they do, he'll still carry that state if he can get to that level. I like Wisconsin because the Republicans have been outpacing the Democrats in that state in voting early, so I think there's a good chance there. Nevada is a possibility. It's been late to come to the table, but I agree with Robert about the unions there, but the members of those unions are not excited about what they're seeing and not having jobs. And I also think Minnesota could be the upset special here. I mean, Robert's on to something in polling that. I've not polled Minnesota, but I do think that Minnesota is a state that has a big independent streak. We've seen it before. We could see it again in this instance. I am optimistic about where the president is. If you're on his side of the aisle, if I'm on the Biden side of the aisle, I'd be very nervous because I'm seeing two things. I'm seeing the African-American vote continue to grow for Trump, and I'm seeing younger voters moving to the president, something no one expected, particularly, believe it or not, with some of the youngest voters who seem to be upset about the risk of another COVID lockdown. Elderly voters or senior voters, I'm almost one of them there, 65
All right, but let me ask
a bit
you
of a
both.
problem.
It defies logic, considering polling companies, got it so wrong in 2016. I would have thought they'd make some adjustments because their desire would be to be able to say, I got it right. Am I wrong? Have they made no adjustments at all to the polling models they're using? Are they using the exact same flawed methodology that they used in 2016? Robert.
Well, they say they've made adjustments, but my question is, if they really have made adjustments, first, they wouldn't be denying the existence of hidden or shy voters. And if they made adjustments, then why do they, every single one of them, get it wrong in Florida in 2018, where there was the next time we had a significant shy voter vote? I mean, you can say all you want, but they actually had a little test on this. They had a dress rehearsal, and they failed.
Matt, I'll give you the last word.
Well, the difficulty is this, Sean. They have to use cell phone data, but they're using it for very long surveys. Many of them last 20, 30 minutes. You can't do that and get a normal cell phone recipient. They won't answer it. So what they're having to do is they're going to massive panels, people who agree to take a cell phone interview, whether they're saying it or not, because a lot of times they're getting their data and they don't know that. These are hyper-political people. They lean to the left. They tend to be more Democrat. They won't say they're from Trump, and that's why you're having this problem, regardless of what other changes they've made in their weighting or any other system they have.
You guys aren't going to like what I'm going to say. Even though you were both right in 2016, I am going to say this. Assume that Robert and Matt are wrong. Assume that the guys that were all wrong in 2016 are right this year, which means you better get out and vote. Assume that your vote will matter and get out and vote with the urgency that would go along with that. That is not meant as I support the other pollsters, by the way. I am hoping you're both right. Fascinating information. Thank you both. All right.